I know, chasing that dough, hitting that road, getting that money, man. All I know, loading that foe, kicking down doors, getting that money, man. We gon' make it money. We gon' take it Grizzly. We gon' make it money. We gon' take it Grizzly.
The next topic we're going to discuss on Boxing Bros is a prime Canelo. All right, you take a prime Canelo versus a prime Andre Ward, and who wins? But before we dive into that, we are asking all of our supporters to retweet this tweet to Eddie Hearn, which is asking Eddie Hearn to give us media passes. As you can see, it's already moving. We have 2 retweets from people we didn't even ask. I know one is Rico, our brother Rico. I'm gonna go on a limb and say the other's the Irish Boxing Bros. Let's see.
I think the other one's me. But...
Oh, you?
Oh, hold on. Wait a minute.
Oh, no.
Tweeted?
We got Fam Loyalty Inc. and Smell the Glove retweeted it. So salute to Fam Loyalty Inc. Go follow Fam Loyalty Inc. and follow Smell the Glove too. Okay, thank you. We appreciate that.
But I did retweet it. I just don't know why it's not showing up on your end.
Yeah, all right. Hey, Gedris Alba, stop feeling yourself, Gedris Alba. We don't Gedris, go somewhere, Gedris.
I told y'all the colder it gets. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Billy G. Williams. Who wins? A prime Canelo or a prime Andre Ward?
All right. So my answer is a prime Canelo. But the reason why is because Andre Ward in his prime, he was only fighting with just one hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had a messed up right shoulder. And so he rarely utilized it in his prime, you know. And so, but I think if he got his shoulder surgery in his prime, then I think I would lean more towards Ward. But for the bulk of his prime, he was literally functioning off of just the left hand. So I think a guy like Canelo, you know, he uses a lot of punches on both the left side and the right side. I think that would be a major disadvantage for Ward. Even though Ward is a real smart fighter, you know, I just feel like he'll need all his, like a complete arsenal to defend himself against a Canelo, especially with Canelo's counter. So that's why I'm leaning towards Canelo because of Ward's physical restrictions that he had during his prime.
All right, Trill Nostradamus. Who would win? Canelo in his prime or Ward in his prime?
Okay, prime Ward. I'm thinking prime Ward, Chad Dawson. You think around there? Ward knocked out Chad Dawson, and after that, winning the Super Six. That I can see that. I can see that being a draw, and the reason why I can see that being
I love the way Trill answers these mythical questions because he's never gonna give you a straight answer, man. You know,
because it's really hard, right? Like, because it's like at any given Saturday with these guys. Canelo has this thing where, you know, most fights where he starts off a little slow, you know, and that can help. Ward's a thinker, so Ward can come out and try to throw these flurries to win certain rounds, right? Ward has this ability to make things. I always consider Ward kind of like a Bernard Hopkins to me. Like, he does little subtle things in there. It's not spectacular things, but he does things and he's pointing when he's winning. He'll grab you. He'll hit inside. He'll do little tricky things, you know. He's been in there with big punches. He knows how to take shots and wrap people up. He can frustrate a Canelo. And I think we've seen Canelo be frustrated before in certain fights. And even if Canelo feels like he has to go in there and box with an Andre Ward, You know, it's really difficult. Styles made fights. It's hard to say unless these guys get in there. That's why I'm leaning for, like, when people gave a draw with I called it a draw with Triple G and Canelo. Even though I was leaning for Canelo, when I watched it again, I was like, yeah, I can see a draw. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can see a draw in this fight.
You talking about part one, not
Part
two.
one. Two, Canelo washed him. To me, you know, it wasn't even, you know, the first fight I even had Canelo, but then I watched it again. I said, all right, cool, I can see a draw. Like, in this fight, it's so difficult, and Ward's such a thinker. And you got to think about Prime Ward too, that was able to, that had some pop that could keep Canelo off of him. You know, it could be a difficult fight, you know, and Canelo could probably come on later on in the rounds. But like I said, he already gave up some rounds in the beginning. So if he don't stop him and he comes on later, like we see in the Laura fight, we might have a draw.
All right, Ned the TBE. Who you
All
got?
right, so when I started watching Ward, I saw his Kovalev fights. I saw from 1 and 2, and then Ward retired. I gotta go with Canelo after that because I didn't get to see much from Ward, like where I'd be like, oh, he's like what I seen of Ward is like he's a good fighter, but I didn't see he retired at an early age where I didn't get to really see the greatness, the prime. So you see, we're witnessing Canelo's prime and we're witnessing what he's doing, and from that all, I've seen Canelo fights. I've seen like many Canelo fights, and I only seen 2 Ward fights. So from what I see from Canelo and what I see from Ward, I gotta go with Canelo because Canelo just looked like a different man now. Back in the days, if he beat Kovalev once, and if it was Canelo next fight, then maybe I throw a draw. But now I just gotta go Canelo because Canelo's just a different man. Even if he come out of retirement, different man.
All right, so we're talking about a fantasy matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, could be real. We'll see. But at this point in time, we're talking about a fantasy matchup because even if hypothetically Andre Ward was to come out of retirement, he wouldn't be in his prime. And of course, Canelo to me is in his prime right now, so it makes it interesting to ask this question. What are you saying, bro? Look like you about to say something.
Canelo now is crazy. That's why I'm saying it's a fantasy fight. You got to play this on like a fight night. You know what I'm saying? The prime Andre Ward and the prime Canelo.
Yeah, 100. If you're asking me to take the best version of Andre Ward that I've ever seen and put it in the ring against the best version of Canelo that I've seen, which would be most likely his last 2 fights, who do I think would win? It is difficult. It's like, you know, grasping at straws and being very nitpicky. But I would go with Andre Ward. And the reason why I would go with Andre Ward is you look at boxers, and I would say this. Boxers tend to survive well against Canelo. But what happens with them, say Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant, is they don't have the ability to keep it up for the entirety of the 12 rounds. Like Ned pointed out something that was very important, which was Callum Smith had the ability to absorb the punishment for 12 rounds, but he never really was in the fight. But he at least had the ability to absorb the punishment to see the distance, right? When you look at Andre Ward's size and his physical stature and his history in the ring, in which he's been in there with punches like Kovalev, and he was able to see the distance, I would put my money on it that Andre Ward would be able to see the distance. In addition to that, you look at Andre Ward's boxing skill with his size, which Callum Smith didn't have the type of boxing skill that Andre Ward has with his size. If you look at it, I feel very confident in saying it. I think most people would agree. Andre Ward's a better boxer than Caleb Plant, and he's bigger than Plant. He's a better boxer than Billy Joe Saunders, and he's bigger than Billy Joe Saunders. And I think those things would give Canelo Alvarez trouble. I think Canelo would beat Canelo. I think he'd be in a close fight. But I think Andre Ward would edge it out with his physical gifts over Canelo Alvarez. But with that being said, I understand why, like, people laugh because, when you look at these type of fantasy matchups, it's usually, it could be a draw. It could go the other way. It could be a split. Like, if they fought 3 times, like, one wins, the other wins, or whatever. But if you're asking me to just, like, pick, in a vacuum, like, who do I think will win in their prime? I think Ward, because of his physical attributes and also his boxing ability. When it seems like boxing ability is what gives Canelo problems, he has the physical ability to take the punishment, and he has the boxing ability to give Canelo problems. But who knows? It's just a fantasy. It's just my opinion.
Please let us know how you feel in the comment section. Please like and subscribe and check us out on Instagram and Twitter. And please check out our podcast on all major streaming services. Also, I would like you to retweet the tweet asking the Zone and Matchroom Boxing for media passes and at Eddie Hearn and asking for media passes. We don't ask for much. You know who we are. We are the Boxing Bros.
You're welcome.